All right, Andy, thanks so much for being a guest on Wicked Smart Golf. Excited to talk with you today.
Michael, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
We need some help on the breathing side of things. We got the mental game covered, so I'm excited for golfers to learn more about that. I always joke like nobody gave us the instruction manual for our mind. Sounds like we never got that for breathing either.
No, and given it's something we do every minute of every day, mostly without thinking about it, when you start to dive into the science behind breathing, but really how it can show up for you as a performance tool on the golf course and even off the golf course, it's something that's really overlooked and something that's pretty easy to start to integrate into your practice.
Yeah, I'm excited to learn more about it. But before we get into that, we got to learn about your background because you're a stick. You're an unbelievable golfer, and you had a really cool experience a couple of weeks ago. So we'll talk about that. When did you get started with golf?
My golf goes back to when I was 5. It's what I did with my parents Sunday afternoons after church. And, I had a little starter set and I just kind of dinked and dunked it around a little bit and really just kind of found that I really loved the game. I loved the challenge. And as years kind of went by, realized I had some talent behind it as well. And that led me to the University of Michigan, where I played for 4 years and was a two-time captain, and then had a had an opportunity, or kind of created an opportunity, I guess. The summer after my freshman year, I qualified for a PGA Tour event, and
Whoa,
for
hold on there. Don't go, don't keep moving so fast. You qualified for a PGA Tour event while you were in college?
yeah, I was 19. I was after my freshman year, and the PGA Tour is in Michigan,
Yeah.
for what was then the Buick Open. And just on a whim, there was no pre-qualifier. You could just send in, I think it was $400 at the time, and get a
That's a
tee
lot
time in the
back then, though.
Monday.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. And had one of those days, and I got in. So
whew.
yeah, here I was, a 19-year-old am, um literally dreamed about playing on the PGA Tour, right? As a lot of us did growing up, but here I was, about to do it, literally running into guys in the locker room that I was watching on TV the week before.
How cool was that?
It was awesome when I ultimately got into the rhythm of the round a little bit. I
Hmm.
wish I knew then what I know now about breathing and mental performance, because I really could have used it then, because you know I I can hardly I can remember hardly being able to get the ball on the tee, and when they called my name, like my hands were just shaking so much I could hardly feel them. And I managed to get it down there. I don't think I hit the fairway, but I
You
at
didn't
least
top
made
it though, like my
contact and,
college
and it
tryouts.
went
So
forward.
I
Yeah.
topped my tee shot in front of the whole team in college. So I understand bad first tee shots into a little lake. Needless to say, they didn't recruit me that day, but at least you didn't do that, and you got off. And like you said, you got to find the rhythm a little bit. But
Yeah.
that's a really cool experience at 19 years old too. When you finished that, was that like? Did you make the cut, or was it when you didn't, if you didn't make the cut, were you just like, I'm really close, or like, was this kind of my future? Like, what did that look like?
No, I knew I was close. And ironically, as timing would have it, I had already had booked some time with Dr. Bob Rotella. And it was in the weeks after. So it was just one of those things. And so we had a really fresh, raw experience to talk about what went on those few days at the Buick. And the combination of that conversation and the time with Dr. Rotella, and seeing that I had some game, solidified for me that I wanted to make a run at it professionally. But I was at Michigan. I was committed to getting my degree. And so while I was a full-time student athlete, I know that takes a little bit different connotation today as it did back in the late 90s when I was a freshman. But I started to really gear up some things so that when it did come time after graduation, that I could turn pro and make a run at it.
Any nuggets you got from Dr. Bob that you still use today? Because that guy's pretty much my inspiration. He's the reason I kind of
Yeah.
got into all this.
The one thing that I always come back to is, after we kind of dissected those couple of days at the Buick Open, he's like, you know what, Andy, you just have to remember they're just guys. They're just guys like you are. They're just really good at what they do. And you have an opportunity to be really good at what you do too. And we kind of that's really what kind of set the conversation in motion. And I still see Dr. Bob every once in a while out on tour, and he's great.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think that's an important thing for everyone to learn too. I mean, like people always put celebrities up or athletes up, and it's like I used to do that too. And I'm sure if I ran into Tiger, I'm gonna get a little starstruck. But for the most part, you just got to be like they're just people. And I think
Yeah.
that when you kind of take them down a peg every once in a while, like especially if you get paired with someone that's a really good golfer, for the everyday player, it's like they're just a person. They just put in a little bit more work. They've been had a little more talent. They, did XYZ, but it's like, I think that can kind of help, right? And take some of that pressure away. Cause I know so many guys that are listening that are, worried about playing with new people or playing with better players, but you just got to kind of have that mindset sometimes.
Yeah, and no, it's no different than, speaking to an attorney or a surgeon or a school teacher. Like they're really good at what they do too. And, everybody's got their niche and where they're most comfortable, you know, doing their thing. For me, for the longest time, it was on the golf course. And I still say there's no place I'm more comfortable than on the golf course. And, while my dream of playing on the PGA Tour didn't necessarily come to fruition as I had envisioned back in the day, I'm now on the PGA Tour full time. I'm just in a different capacity and helping a lot of players, you know, be better.
That's amazing. How long were you doing the pro tour life then?
I played for 10 years.
That's
So
incredible.
I got my status up on PGA Tour Canada and played a couple of seasons in South Africa. Had some what's now Corn Ferry Tour status in like 2012. And then it was kind of around that time where, I just, life was happening and I was playing great golf. That was the weird thing. But it was just time. It
Hmm.
wasn't an easy decision, but it was also one that when the decision was made, like you knew it felt right.
And the cool thing is you can still get into amateur golf, which you just recently did. So you qualified for a pretty big tournament. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I played the US Mid-am a couple of weeks ago in Richmond, Virginia, which was awesome. To play in a USGA championship was great. I've been fortunate to play a few of them before, but this was the first one I played in 8 years. I qualified for the Mid-am in 2016 when I first got my amateur status back. And yeah, as a working professional, you don't spend as much time honing your craft as you did when you were chasing it full time. And
Right.
so to have the opportunity to really tee it up on, for those of us over 25, probably the biggest amateur stage that there is was really fun. And the USGA they did such an awesome job. It was two fantastic golf courses, and I wish I could have stayed a little bit longer, but I think I left my putter back here in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, I had a couple guys I knew from Arizona that were in it, and just seeing the course looked like it was playing tough though.
Yeah, Kinloch, which was the host course, the rough was easily 8 inches long.
Wow.
The greens were pure. Fairways were generous, but if you missed them, you
Hmm.
were you were struggling. And it had rained a bit leading up to that with the other hurricane that came through, and so everything was wet and played long, and it was a great test. It was really fun to kind of feel the grind again.
Yeah, I mean, what's so cool though is that like, professional football players, they can't just like get into, amateur football. Like the fact that it didn't go as you planned, but then you're still, like you said, on the PGA Tour. Now you get to still do all the amateur stuff. You could play in any event that you want now. Like that's one of the reasons I just love golf. I mean, I got a tournament I go up to in Oregon, and it's a 400 players. It's the biggest match play on a single golf course. It's 27 holes over like a week. You have players from 15 to 75. They have like super senior flights. I'm like, I'm gonna be that guy, like 75, smoking a
That's
cigar, having a
amazing.
drink. Like that's why you gotta love golf and competitive golf. So that's kind of where we're gonna get into is performing under pressure, because I know
Yeah.
that that's a big challenge for a lot of players. And without the right mindset, without the right breathing, and a lot of other things that we talk about, it's going to be really hard. So before we get into the tournament side of things, like why should people even care about improving their breathing, right? We do this naturally. Like how can it actually help our life before we get into the golf side of things?
Yeah, absolutely. So when our body gets stressed, there's a lot of things that happen, and we kind of feel them as, our heart rate goes up. We might kind of get those butterflies in our stomach, maybe cold, sweaty hands. Like our body just has these natural responses that happen when we get stressed. We'll breathe faster too,
Mm-hmm.
but breathing is the only one when you put attention to or control over that you can actually do something about. Breathing works like a metronome for our entire body. So if that metronome is going really fast, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, every physiological function in our body, including our brain, which we're relying on to make good decisions and execute shots when we're out on the golf course, it's going a mile a minute. And if we don't do anything about it, we're going to just stay in that stress state for so long and basically lose access to the skills that we've practiced and we've seen ourselves do 1,000 times on the putting green or the practice tee. And so breathing becomes so important because it's the one thing that we can control, when you're aware of it, when you're not sleeping every minute of every day.
I'm excited to learn more too, because in really the theme of Wicked Smart Golf is better golf without swing changes, and a real kind of sub theme is control what you can. Right? There's a lot we
Hmm.
can't control: the people you get paired with, how you
Right.
wake up that morning, the course conditions. The golf gods sometimes give it to you, give you some good challenges. So it's like we got to control what we can, and breathing definitely is a big one. I have a chapter in my book, but it's a very small chapter, so I'm excited to learn more about this. So what is proper breathing? What does that actually look like? And is it like, I guess, what are some of the mistakes people make to not allow them to breathe properly and receive those benefits?
Yeah, and I think the first place to start, like breathing, is the one thing that we're often told and we've always associated with relieving stress, right?
Hmm.
Michael, you've been told, hey, you look a little stressed. Do me a favor, take a deep breath,
Right.
right? And so when we talk about what people are doing wrong, when we see that one big breath that we're told to take happen,
Hmm.
we see this big chest filled breath and this
Yep.
big exaggerated exhale. And that's wrong. And that's what's actually costing us. When we
Interesting. So
talk
that's the
about
wrong way to breathe.
that is the wrong way to breathe.
Okay.
Because when you start to look at it, even just physically, like not even, take into account what's happening with the air intake and the oxygen exchange that's happening, when you're rising up and you're breathing that way, you're only using the upper capacity of your lungs, and your diaphragm, which is your primary breathing muscle, kind of comes up and almost gets in up under your ribs. So we're limiting the amount of air that we're actually able to take. And so when we take those deep breaths and we still feel out of breath or we still feel stressed, it's because we used probably a fraction of our lung capacity and the body wasn't able to do what it truly wants to do when you start to incorporate a deep breath in stressful situations. And so what
Wow. Okay.
one of the first things that I do with every client, whether I'm working with, a major winner on the PGA Tour or a junior golfer, is start to work on some of those biomechanics just like we do, in our golf swing.
Hmm.
So, golfer, quarterback, soccer player, you name it, we're all breathing throughout these activities that we do. And there's just a fundamentally proper way to breathe. And that's even before we get into how we apply breathing on the golf course.
So what are the different types of breathing too, just to kind of start at the big picture and work our way to golf?
Yeah, so we've all probably heard, the term deep breathing or diaphragmatic breathing. I just referenced the diaphragm being that breathing muscle. When we're starting to breathe and breathe to help manage stress under pressure, we want to really engage that diaphragm. So when you start to see someone breathe properly and they inhale, typically through the nose is ideal,
Hmm.
and you see their belly expand and you see their shoulders stay really quiet, that's when we start to see the benefits of breathing start to start to take hold.
So in a different interview, you said there's mouth, there's nose, and there's diaphragmatic. Like should we be breathing in through our nose, out through our nose? Like how does that all work? I guess with different responses to different parts of the body.
Yeah, there's a ton of science behind why nasal breathing is so important.
Okay.
So if we're to order them, the the three methods, if you will, as it relates to nose and mouth breathing, in and out through your nose is ideal. In through the nose, out through the mouth is next best.
Okay.
And mouth is third because, you know, we may have a cold, congestion, allergies, deviated
Right.
septum, whatever it might be. It's really hard to get oxygen in and out through the nose, and we need air. We need oxygen. So, um, just starting to carry that level of awareness, almost even before we get into the biomechanics of breathing, starting to notice, are you breathing with your mouth open, or are you able to get more air through the nose? And just that alone starts to build the momentum in the right direction, that when you do actively breathe, the body becomes that much more responsive to it when you really need it.
God, I wish we learned anything in school. I swear this stuff would just be so helpful, right? It's like, because I think the biggest thing is that, John Weir obviously connected us, a great guy, four-time guest. And, he always talks about stress is the inhibitor of getting in the zone.
Mhm.
And one of the easiest ways to obviously get stressed out is to not have your breathing under control. And that's going to, be at the office. This could be with your kids. This could be on the golf course. So it's like we have to figure out how we can minimize that stress. So basically, what you're saying is when we're fast breathing or not breathing enough, we're basically going into fight or flight mode, and our mind's like just not really 100% doing what it should be, because it's like, oh, where's that tiger? Where's that, threat at? Is that kind of what I'm getting?
You're exactly right. And when we start to put some numbers on it, golfers, we love to measure things. You know, the average adult breathes between 15 and 18 breaths per minute. In order for the body to get out of that fight or flight state and kind of into that more balanced state where it can enter the zone, we need to be closer to six.
6 breaths a minute?
So 6 breaths per minute. So the average adult is breathing 2 to 3 times faster than what they need to be breathing to be able to get the body into that optimal zone light state that we're all in search of, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've done it all, tie our shoe in a double knot, put three T's in our left pocket because that's what we did yesterday when we made three birdies. To be able to start to use the breath as that cue to get the body into the spot where we want it to be, is it, it's scientifically proven that that's what you can do with it.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, this is where I just feel like there's so many things that can help on the golf course that can also help with your life, and there's no
Yeah.
doubt this can help. I was doing some research, and you got into HRV. Can you explain that a little bit to the everyday person that maybe doesn't understand that, and what the role is that plays on and off the course?
Yeah, so heart rate variability is the variation in the heartbeats. So when we often wear a heart rate monitor, or say you grab the handles on a piece of cardio equipment and you see that your heart rate is 100 beats per minute if
Hmm.
you're exerting some energy. Your heart is not beating at the same interval for every single one of those 100 beats, or maybe easier for conversation. If it's at 60 beats per minute, it's not beating at every second. It's varying in between. And the higher that variability, the more resilient the body is to stress. So if we have a low heart rate variability, the body is more prone to be stressed or is in a stress state. And so all of the things that we do off the golf course, whether it be breathing, whether it be our nutrition, hydration, um, things that we do to help our body recover, can help to increase that variability. So what happens is when it's time to downshift, our body actually has the ability to downshift. It's not just at that high metronome pace if you will, all the
Hmm.
time.
Yeah, the
But
metronome, I think.
conversely,
Oh yeah, I was gonna say the metronome's a good example, I think, because I talk about the Tour Tempo app, and that's kind of
yeah.
like a metronome, and I feel like that makes sense for people, especially golfers, because they really understand it with putting and other parts. But
Hmm.
so we want it to be more back and forth. We don't want the just quick little ones, right? That's getting ourselves too stressed out. Am I understanding this right? This is way over. I'm learning a lot here, so I just want to make sure that my audience and myself are getting this right.
Yeah, yeah. Heart rate is different from heart rate variability, and heart rate
Okay.
variability gives us a really good insight into the body's ability to adapt to stress or how resilient it is.
Perfect. So you mentioned obviously doing the, Intel we'll get into in just a second, but even other things can impact it like diet, exercise, sleep. Like how does that even play a role?
Well, it's interesting, the clients that I've been fortunate to work with, one of the first things that they come back to me and say when we start on a breathing protocol is how much better they're sleeping.
Mm,
And we know how we feel after a good night's sleep versus a short night's sleep. And so by starting to influence our sleep with some breathing, it really starts to get that cycle going. So if we want to layer on a workout the next day, we've got a nice night of sleep in our back
hmm.
pocket. We've got more energy, we've got more resiliency. We might be able to push it in the gym a little bit more and get some more out of it.
This is what I need help with. I am running on like 5 hours of sleep right now. I get to go to the gym here in a little bit, but my sleep has really been struggling this year. So I'm looking for any ways to improve that. So this sounds like definitely a good opportunity to kind of get into Intel and how you guys can like manage this, because I feel like this all sounds good, right? But it's like, how do I actually measure it and improve my breathing so that I can be better, sleep better with my family, better at my job, better on the golf course.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And that's what we set out to do at Neuropeak Pro with the Intel belt is create a wearable that you can use to actually see not only what your physical breathing looks like, but also see in real time how your body's stress response is reacting to your breathing. And so you can you throw on the Intel belt, you wear it just like you would a normal heart rate monitor, and
Hmm.
then you follow a pacer. There's 1,000 breathing pacers you can download from the app stores, but they don't really show you how closely you're following that pacer. And that's what the Intel belt is able to do. And so you can really start to see, are you actually breathing at a 4 second inhale and a 4 second exhale?
Hmm.
And then what is happening with your physiology and with your heart rate and your heart rate variability? So we really start to hone in on what your body is telling us about where it is right here and now, but then also creating an opportunity for us to start to close the gap between that stressful state that we might be in and a more balanced state as we're going before. Because I know a lot of listeners, a lot of viewers, are wearing a fitness tracker, you know, Whoop, Oura Ring, Fitbit, Garmin, like you name it, right? And we've all woken up the morning after a day of doing all of the right things. I
Hmm.
slept well, I stretched, nutrition, hydration, all of those things we've talked about, and I'm at 71%, and I have to go be 100% of myself today. Like, what gives? So, where breathing comes in and where the Intel belt becomes so helpful is you can identify that gap and close it by carving out 5, maybe just 10 minutes to be able to move what was a 71% recovery score maybe into the 80s or 90s.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, you're 100% right. There's nothing worse than me and my girlfriend. Some days will like I didn't even look at my sleep score. I just had stuff I had to do. I didn't want to look because sometimes when I look early and I'm like, oh God, I slept terrible last night. Then I tell myself, well, I slept terrible, so then I am not going to be as good. And some days I just know I'm not going to look at it. I'm just going to do the things I said I needed to do. But I would love to make life a little bit easier. So that definitely sounds like a great benefit to this. And I read on your guys' website, 200 minutes of training increase the consistency of breathing patterns by 29.4%. So that's amazing. And obviously
Hmm.
we want to get that consistency. Everybody wants consistency on the golf
Everybody
course.
wants consistency.
So what does the actual protocol look like? So I buy the belt, I strap it on, and you said it's worn on your chest. And then what does the training look like?
Yeah, so your listeners are getting a little bit of a sneak peek into what's coming down the pike right now is we're now able to do an evaluation with the Intel bell that takes about 12 minutes that identifies, how well you're physically breathing. That's a key component of what we've always taught at Neuropeak Pro, but also how well does your body respond or actually recover from stress when it has a chance to get amped up, but then also dial back down. And then also the body's tolerance to carbon dioxide. The reason the carbon dioxide conversation becomes so important is when we start breathing faster and things start getting out of sync, that CO2 builds up in our system. And when it hits the brain, it starts to exacerbate that fight or flight response that we're actually trying to move in the other direction.
Mm-hmm.
So we can now quantify that. And what happens now is the Neuropeak Pro app will create for you, it'll be Michael's 28-day breathing plan that's
Mm.
going to address each of those three areas based on kind of how those scores triangulate. And so it's not just, hey, we're all going to breathe at a 4-1-4-1 pace because that gets us to 6 breaths per minute. And we know that that's helpful. Super helpful to do if that's all you're going to do. But now we can get into what is exactly appropriate for your physiology. Like if you came and grabbed my driver out of my bag, it may not be right for yours. It's still a driver, but it's not fit for you.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you try and swing my driver, the accommodations are going to be made to try and get it to work. And that's just not what we need to do given the technology that's available to us now. So having a prescriptive and personalized breathing plan for you helps to build that foundation for you. It's just like setting your practice station up on the range or on the putting green, right? You're there to get some work done, and that's what that 28-day breathing plan really helps you do. And then from there, where it gets really fun for me is starting to say, okay, now we're on the golf course. Now it's Saturday morning and we're ready to go tee it up with our buddies or in a tournament. Like, how can we start to use the breath the way that we've trained it to really give you a competitive advantage so that you can get in your buddies' pockets and not be the one that's having to get into your own and pay them?
Yeah, like your guy, Dr. Bob Rotella always says, train it on the range so you can trust it on the course. But that actually is just for the swing. But now we got to train the breathing side of it. And just to make sure I understand this, so you said is there one way to breathe, but everyone needs to get there differently based on a plan catered to them? Because I might breathe different than this person and this person. So you guys basically create a customized plan to then get to the optimal 6 breaths a minute.
So there's various different breathing patterns that help elicit different responses from the body.
Okay.
The ones that we focus on are using the diaphragm and using the belly. You'll see other breathing methods where, you do a full inhale and then you try and like do a second breath on top of that, and that starts to fill up the upper lungs even more. We haven't gotten into that yet. I mean, our science team is phenomenal, and we're working on the next phase of what Neuropeak Pro's breathing training is. But just even out of the gate, we can move someone so much further in the right direction just by working on some of these basics because they've been neglected for so long that a few minutes a day can really help. And whether it's a symmetrical breath, whether it's a box breath, which you often hear associated with, snipers and Navy SEALs, or really long breath holds from some of the practitioners out there, like deep breathing or breathing in general is going to help you. if we're starting to use it to really help manage stress when we're under pressure, we found that these techniques are most beneficial.
Gotcha. So what are some ways then, like, let's say, is this something that you like really do need to train, obviously off the course so that way it shows up on, or is like someone's over that first tee shot, they're nervous, they're doing this. Is there a, do this for 5 seconds, do this? Like, do you have any sort of little things like that, even if someone isn't quite ready to invest yet in that and they're just trying to like maybe be a little less nervous or they have that nervy putt on 18 just to kind of help them out?
Yeah, yeah, certainly. There are a lot of different ways to be able to really approach this, but I think that the simplest one is just bringing an awareness um, to your breath when you're walking to the first tee. There's, our body's going to naturally get stressed, and it's going to do all of those things that it's designed to do when we sense a threat. But if we can just start to do some basic breathing exercises, and the first thing I would say is just put your hand on your belly and inhale and make your belly get bigger. Like that's deactivating those shoulders. Like that's the simplest form of starting to engage in some diaphragmatic breathing and getting the body out of that stress response.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was gonna say the first tee and the 18th hole seem to always have the most stress for most people. So always trying to find little ways to do that. And it sounds like the training that you guys have isn't like 30, 40 minutes. Like this is something that you can do 5, 10 minutes when you're at home. Because I know people are obviously wicked busy and they want to, get on with everything else. But it sounds like 5, 10 minutes and you can start to see some benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. And it goes back to that consistency play, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I can have someone commit to five, maybe push that 10-minute mark just 5 days a week, it's less than an hour of your entire
Yeah.
week. That is huge. And whether you're using the Intel belt or you're just download the Neuropeak Pro app and you use some of the simple pacers that are in there, like that's going to guide you down that road to be able to start to implement breathing. And whether that is walking to the first tee or walking into the classroom or the boardroom or the operating room, whatever you do outside of your golf life, there's places to apply breathing just about anywhere.
I didn't realize there's a free part of the app too.
Yeah, there is.
Oh,
Just
okay.
for downloading the app and creating an account, there's actually a foundational fundamentals of breathing series where myself and one of my colleagues is walks you through 3 steps to help improve your breathing. And for those who are curious, but want to see maybe what it looks like,
Mm-hmm.
that's a great first step to take.
Nice. I didn't realize that. That's super cool. Yeah, I feel like you said, it's something that is so simple but can provide not only results on the course, but like and just like tomorrow, like the rest of your life. Like this is a
Yeah,
huge skill that we just again, nobody gave us the manual, and it's so automatic, and I feel like it is a low-hanging fruit, and it feels like one of those things that can help with all areas of the game. Very few tips help with putting, chipping, driving. So
yeah.
this is exciting stuff, and you guys have worked with some amazing athletes. Actually, you guys kind of got on my radar. I think I saw an ad maybe last year, and then I remember seeing you guys on quarterbacks, right, with Kirk Cousins, and I was like, wait, I've heard of them. I think maybe Jordan Spieth or Bryson. I remember seeing some different guys talking about it or seeing some ads for you guys. You guys work with different athletes in all kinds of sports. What's that been like to see how breathing can help football versus golf and any other sport?
Yeah, it's super exciting. You mentioned the Netflix quarterback series with Kirk. He's been a client of Neuropeak Pro since his days at Michigan State.
Mm,
Um, we're in 17 or 18 NHL locker rooms. We do a lot of work with the DFB Academy, the soccer academy in Germany. So I say that with the science behind breathing doesn't change, right?
hmm
We apply it, and I apply it particularly in golf, but we can apply it wherever we go. And again, those foundational elements of learning how to breathe better apply to every single one of those athletes and every single one of us listening and watching. Um, where it becomes a little bit more nuanced is yes, how do we apply it on the golf course? How do we apply it at the rink or on the pitch? Um, there's so many different ways to be able to do it. And getting back to the question you asked earlier, where it becomes so powerful, it's not just something that you can do in the moment when you're starting to feel the nerves,
Hmm.
but that consistency play. It's like every time you run a breathing session, you're just putting a little bit of money in the bank, right?
Hmm.
Life is getting busier and stressful by the day. And the more that we can start to get ahead of that, the smaller the impact that stress is going to have on whatever we're going to do next. So, yeah, if you're standing on the seventh tee and your buddies are razzing you and the shot doesn't fit your eye, like there's an opportunity right there to get into your breathing and start to deactivate that fight or flight response.
Mm.
But because you've done your breathing and it's been a part of what you've been doing, when you do it, your body knows exactly what to do and it's able to tap into that resiliency quicker than if you're just like, oh, this is a nervy shot, or I'm standing over a 6 footer and it doesn't feel right. Like, that's not the time to learn how to breathe. We we want you to do it beforehand.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think we always just are looking for the quick fix, right? The Amazon mentality has kind of ruined that for everybody. I mean, I ordered something at 7 a.m. It's probably going to be here by the time this interview is over. So it's like we always want the fast results,
Right.
but like you said, it just doesn't take that much time, and I think that's really good. I always, when I started meditating 7, 8 years ago, they were like, people say, I don't have time to meditate. And it's like, well, no, that means you're the person that needs to meditate, right? And so it's kind of the same thing
Yeah.
with this.
And to put it in perspective, Michael, we're going to take, upwards of 20,000 breaths today. All I need you to do is take 60 good ones.
Really? I did not. Yeah, 'cause I mean, I've seen the stats like you have 30,000 plus thoughts a day. Didn't realize you have that many breaths a day.
Yeah, so if you start to extrapolate that 15 to 18 breaths per minute over the course of an entire day, that number gets up there pretty quick. And, we've all kind of forgotten the ability to, let our foot off the gas, let alone find the brake, right?
Guilty. Yeah.
Yeah, we all are. We all are. And 60 breaths, roughly 10 minutes. And if I, like I said, if I can get someone to do that for 5 days a week, the changes are going to be profound, not just in what shows up for you on the golf course, but, at home in conversations with your partner, your
Hmm.
spouse, difficult conversations with a boss or having to give a
Yeah.
presentation or a pitch. Like, we all know what it feels like to get stressed. It doesn't just show up on the golf course.
Definitely. That's actually what I was going to say. Is it like better to do it in the morning? Is it midday if you have lunch break? I mean, I'm sure they benefit all of them, but is there one you guys generally see with most of your successful
Mm.
people that are using it?
So if we focus in on the golfers, my recommended time is within a couple of hours before your tee time.
That makes sense.
So like like Jordan will do it before he goes to the golf course. Keegan will do it in his car in the clubhouse parking lot before he goes out there. And the reason for that, and when we start to get around that 10-minute mark, the effects of that session starts to cascade out for a couple of hours, 2, 3
Mm,
hours. And that's if you do nothing about it. So when you look at what we do as golfers, we drive to the golf course, you know, hopefully we get a little bit of a warm up in, we get to the range, the putting green, whichever order you do it in, and then you get to the first tee. Like those are things that are just going to kind of tax our body a little bit and start to turn up that stress response as we get closer to go time.
hmm.
And so if we have that money in the bank to draw on, we've got the ability to tolerate that. And then when we're on the golf course, like there's ways to use your breathing. um, I'll let you in on one of the secrets is there's three things you can't do and breathe at the same time. You can't eat, you can't drink, and you can't talk. So here you and I have been having a conversation for the last 30 minutes or so, and all we've been doing is talking.
Hmm.
When you're standing on the tee box, the best thing that you can do is breathe because typically we're not eating, drinking, or talking when those that we're playing with are hitting their shots.
Hmm.
So just breathe, whether it's 2 breaths or a minute's worth of breath. Like use that time to drop a little bit of a reminder to your nervous system that, hey, even though everything around me is telling me I need to be up for this shot,
Yeah.
you don't have to be.
That's really a good, because I'm always looking for little things people can do during the round, and like you said, like on the tee box, that's a really easy one. And sometimes it's hard too, like when you're in a cart. Like I always joke, it's easier to get mad when you're walking versus in a cart, because when you're walking, you have to like physically walk and you have some time between the shot. There's nothing worse than hitting a bad tee shot and then you're there in like 5 seconds in a golf cart. So it's like if we can do little things like that, even on the tee box or before the shots, and I feel like now, I've seen, different players do like the long drive guys. They seem to be breathing to pump up
Yeah.
their adrenaline versus guys that are trying to calm down. Like, explain kind of the difference between those two.
Yeah, go back to the metronome analogy, right? If
Mm-hmm.
we breathe faster, it's going to send that signal to the nervous system that we need to activate a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
We've done a lot of work with Bryson, and so you look back when he was hitting it over the pond on 13 at Bay Hill,
Such a good shot.
right? He was actively breathing in a way that didn't get him out of control,
Mm-hmm.
but allowed his body to drop a little bit of adrenaline and cortisol into the system that may result in a few more miles an hour of clubhead speed.
Mm-hmm.
The difference between that and the stress state that we often get into is like that's intentional and that's under control.
Mm-hmm.
Because when Bryson was on the PGA Tour, not only was he one of the longest hitters, but he was also one of the best putters. He was making something like 90% of his putts inside 10 feet.
And he looked so
So,
mechanical doing it, but man, he was making everything.
right. And the physical state to hit it 340 in the air and the state where you need to be in to make 90% of your putts inside 10 feet are like
Mm-hmm.
polar opposites.
Mm-hmm.
So Bryson is a perfect example of using his breathing to be able to move his body into and out of the state that he wants to be in. And so it's for me helping players identify where are you right now
Mm-hmm.
and where do you want to be or where do you feel you need to be able to do whatever it is that you're going to do next to the best of your ability. And if you're a little bit behind the power curve and
Mm-hmm.
you feel like you need to activate up a little bit, do it.
Mm-hmm.
But for the majority of us, we get stressed really quick
Yeah.
and we need to find the break a little bit.
Gosh, that's just, yeah. Bryson's a great example. Mark, when he was on the show last week, was talking about how of all, Bryson's like the most technical person out there building 3D printing his own clubs and stuff. But he said that he told Mark one time one of the best ways he improved his swing was by just sitting down and visualizing it and just trying to imagine all the swing changes. So I got to give this guy so many props. I love Bryson, but the fact that he got into breathing, the mental side, the working out, the speed training, long drive, like this guy leaves no stone unturned. I
Right.
absolutely respect that. And that's a good example. Thanks for sharing that, because I'm pretty sure every golfer remembers Bryson's epic shot there, but
Yeah.
we probably don't give his putting nearly enough credit. Because I remember when he won his first U.S. Open, I remember seeing that stat too. It was like inside 10 feet, it was in.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Oh,
we've we've all read the books, right? And we've all worked with mental performance coaches and sports psychologists that are helping us, you know, instill thought processes and visualizations and the routines and the things that we know are there to support us to make, good decisions and play better golf. The analogy that I often use, and I think this might resonate with everyone, it's like when Apple or Google is going to drop the latest operating system for their devices, like we know that they're the latest and greatest. They're the most efficient, you
mm-hmm.
know, they're clean. But if you've got a phone that's maybe a couple years old and you've got a few too many apps open and too many photos on there, like it doesn't matter how good you try and visualize or try and commit to a process or your routine, if your body's not in a spot to be able to run that software, you're gonna get in your own way. And I think that's where a lot of us get to. Like our intentions are always good, but it's so dang hard to do it
Mm-hmm.
when it matters. And what we're seeing and what we've been able to really help a lot of players on tour and in college and even our weekenders start to do is again close that gap from playing in a state of stress to one where we have an opportunity to get into that zone or flow like state to allow the time that we put into the game actually show up.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I can't wait to learn more. I got some serious room to improve here. So this has been a lot of fun. And before getting into my last question, want to learn where people should follow you or your brand and figure out more about working together.
Yeah, we are neuropeakpro.com and Neuropeak Pro on all the socials. It's Neuropeak Pro. Um, I'm not very active on social. You won't find me, so definitely head to the Neuropeak Pro accounts and in the website, and you can see a little bit more of the Intel belt in action. But yeah, what I would really encourage, listeners and viewers to do is, head to the App Store, Google Play, and download the Neuropeak Pro app. It takes 2 seconds to create an account, and there's a breathing fundamentals series. There's 3 4-minute videos that are going to walk you through the steps that I've helped some of the top athletes in the world go just to start to build those breathing fundamentals. And then if you want to, you can start to layer on some of that golf specific coaching. But even if you just go and check out those fundamentals and even just start to bring a higher level of awareness of your breathing into your everyday life, you're going to start to notice some pretty significant changes in not only your performance, but how you're able to manage stress.
People are going to listen to this podcast and get better on the course and off the course. I love it. That's what we're looking for. There's so many similarities, like we talked about before we hit record. For the last question, I want to say, you've played obviously competitively for 20, 30 years. I know you've done it at PGA Tour level, which is amazing, by the way. I love that story at 19. We got a lot of golfers that are getting into the tournament side of things or maybe thinking about it. And I even have a lot of, senior players that have never played in a tournament and they're getting into them too. So what's some first time tournament tips you might give to amateurs that are finally ready to put themselves under a little bit of pressure?
I mean, and it doesn't even relate to breathing, but give yourself time. I often find still, even as much competitive golf that I've played, the time from when I put the car in park in the parking lot to my tee time, goes a lot faster than what I think I've allowed myself for. So, I think that's, giving ourselves the time to be able to do all the things that we need to do and not feel rushed, the things that we can do to help keep our body in the rhythm that we want it to be in becomes hugely helpful. And then obviously I'm super biased. And even if you take 60 seconds, throw your hand on your belly and just count 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out, you're going to be amazed at how relaxed you start to feel and how present you can be. We've all been told, Dr. Bob has told us 1,000 times you need to stay in the present. And I always went back to him. I was like, I know that, but I don't know how and I can't do it. And for me, breathing was that one. So if I'm focusing in my breathing, I'm actually able to be exactly where my feet are. And I'm not thinking about the next shot and I'm not thinking about the putt I maybe should have made on the last green, but I'm able to be right where I am and, for the all intents and purposes, enjoy the game a heck of a lot more.
I love it. Be where your feet are. I think that's so key, and we appreciate you sharing so much and kind of opening my world up. I feel like there's a whole new component now to playing wicked smart golf. So thanks again for being on the show.
Michael, thank you. I really appreciate it.